Hello and welcome to Bust and Beyond with your host Robin Hayhurst. In this podcast, Robin will introduce guests that have known failure and want to share their story about how they got through it and what happened next. This will make you learn how to see things from a new perspective and avoid making the same mistakes. Please welcome Robin Hayhurst.
Hello and welcome to Bust and Beyond. We're very lucky to have Sam Pillin here today. Sam is a digital marketer and owns an agency. So hello, Sam.
Good morning, Robin. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And it's morning, isn't it? We're recording this on a Saturday morning, so which is a bit different.
It's good to be with you.
So, Sam, can you tell us a little bit about your background? And you had a failure in business we were talking about earlier. What kind of made you, where did you start out in business and what was your first business? And tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been in advertising and marketing since the late 90s, that long ago, and started off in TV, but very quickly moved into digital media. Lived through the dot-com crash of 2000 and the craziness of that, and was out talking to ad agencies about this newfangled thing called new media, the internet. I hope you don't mind me saying, but all the ad agencies then were saying it's all men on porn sites. It's it's not anyone else. And perhaps at the time it probably was. But we would go out to ad agencies and talk to them about the internet and how people were using social media. And then worked in sort of different spaces in this, worked in sport, worked in one of the big parenting portals, worked in one of the sort of first female portals, until eventually decided that I didn't want to do the London commute and the working for someone else and didn't want to do media anymore, and had what I call my midlife crisis. And that is I set up a high-end wedding cake business. And that's where the story starts.
Okay, so I suppose in those days didn't have home working, so the commute was, I'm not too far from you and I travel to London occasionally, and I must say I wouldn't like to do it every day. People still do.
Yeah.
So cakes, why cakes?
It's a really good question. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, first of all, it was something more creative. And I think I was craving something that took the creative kind of things that we could do in advertising, but actually sort of manifested in something physical. But also there was a piece of nostalgia to it as well, in that my nan, my mum's mum, who sadly passed away now, she used to make wedding cakes. And so when I'd go round to her house as a child, her house would smell of fruit cake and brandy that she was soaking the fruit cakes in. And on all the surface, there would be sugar flowers, and everywhere would be covered with icing sugar. And so I think when I got to the stage in my career where I didn't know what to do next, and I just knew I didn't want to do what I was doing, I kind of reverted to my childhood and decided to go into cakes.
Okay. So you used to make cakes. So how did you start the business? What was your first step in starting this whole new kind of thing? It was your first business you'd run yourself, so obviously you'd been working for someone before that.
Well, yeah, I'd been working. I mean, I've also got a family of, I suppose you'd call them entrepreneurs now, but it was family business when I was a child. I don't think the word entrepreneur was used. So there was a family business that my dad and my mum and my auntie, my uncle, my brother, other cousins, etc., worked for the family business. So I was quite used to the concept, or I wasn't scared of setting up my own business. But it didn't really start with me saying, right, that's it, I'm going to set up a cake business. It was more that I just started making cakes. I started talking to the mums on the, you've probably heard this story loads of times, talking to other parents. Someone said, oh, my mum and dad have got an anniversary. Can you make a cake? Made that cake, thought, oh, quite enjoy this. Then contacted like local delis and bakeries, and could I supply to them, and started to kind of grow it that way. Realized kind of quite quickly that making the odd cupcake or cake pop was not going to provide an income, that I needed to go bigger cakes and high-end cakes. And that's, I suppose, I went away, learned lots, went on lots and lots of courses, and decided to make wedding cakes. So yeah, it started with a school gate and ended up with big hotels.
So you niched.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we're always taught to niche nowadays. That's where the power is, really, in the niche. So, wedding cakes.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So you've got this wedding cake business. What was going right about it? What was your big successes in it?
So on the surface, the business looked really, really successful. I had a cake in Hello magazine. I'd done a cake for a celebrity couple, and I was name checked, and my company was in it, and shots of the couple cutting the cake. I was writing for cake magazines and websites around the world. I'd quickly kind of worked out that I think it's probably a different market now, and we're talking about 10, 12 years ago, but magazines had a stronger hold in the marketplace at that time. And through my kind of marketing experience, I realized that a lot of the editors and the feature editors and magazines, they just needed to fill the magazines. So I contacted them, started to nurture these relationships with the editors, and would just say to them, okay, what features have you got coming up? And they might say, oh, we're doing floral cakes, we're doing hand painted cakes, we're doing green cakes. And then I would go away, make lots of these kind of fake cakes on dummies, so they weren't actually for people, but make loads of cakes for these features, send in lots and lots of photos. Also learned a little bit about sort of studio photography, and would send them lots of photos. So there would quite often there'd be magazines with 20 or 25 of my cakes in, simply because I made it really easy for the editors to fill their pages. So on the surface, it looked really, really successful, because for just me in the business, I was kind of everywhere. I was preferred supplier to some of the big hotels around London. I was asked to fly out to Dubai to make someone's 70th wedding cake out there on Christmas Eve. I didn't do it, I hasten to add. But on the surface, it looked really, really successful.
I think, though, that is so common in business. From the outside, every business looks like it's really successful. And I often hear people say, oh, I wish I was like them. I wish I was running my business like them, or I had their place in the market. But I knew that those people they're talking about weren't doing very well. They were struggling. I've seen people judge me in that way, where they think you're absolutely and completely loaded, at times when I had no money at all. And you get comments like, well, you can afford it, or things like that. It is surprising. And this kind of, I think this grows on me more and more as an idea that actually looking in the mirror and competing with that person in the mirror and forgetting about everybody else is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, there's a saying that I love that I'm going to probably get this wrong, but it's not as good as it looks from the outside. It's never as bad as it feels from the inside. So everyone else, it looks great, and actually just feels so, so tough to you when you're in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whatever you're doing, if you're running a business, you're aspiring to something else. So it always looks worse on the inside. Yeah. And actually the whole point, I think, of being successful as business is seeing through that and seeing where you're going. And so your 5-year plans and stuff like that. So what support did you have with your cake business, and why was it going wrong? I know you're busy and it looks great from the outside, but why weren't you making money?
Yeah, it was exactly that. On the surface, it looked amazing. But this small business that I'd set up to work around, by that point, I had 3 kids. I had a baby. And this business I'd set up supposedly that could bring me an income, bring me revenue, and I could fit around the family, was doing the exact opposite. And I was, in fact, working more like 80 to 90-hour weeks. Of course, when you're holding cake consultations, when you're talking to clients, when you're delivering cakes, that's all going to be in the evenings, at weekends, around other people's work time. And then the rest of the time, you're sourcing materials, you're baking, you're doing your advertising, you're doing your marketing, you're doing your accounts, etc. So it looked hugely successful, but I was working these really long hours. I was horrible to live with. I'm absent from, literally, if you look at about 2 years of family photos, it would be my husband going down and seeing his family down in the south of England and the 3 kids, and I wouldn't be in any of the photos at all because I was back delivering cakes, working. I'd also be like falling into bed at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, covered in icing sugar, and not kind of like in a sexy way, really moody and grumpy and tired, and sleeping for 3 hours before getting back up again. I mean, my husband had absolutely every right to walk out on me and didn't. Funnily enough, it's our anniversary today, so I'm particularly grateful to him. He really supported me, but it just was ridiculous hours, and actually quite stressful, weirdly, as well. You're delivering a cake and it suddenly hits 40 degrees and things are melting and it's someone's wedding and someone's big day. It's actually quite stressful. And so I did have support. I was in networking, but also I had a business master. I was in a business mastermind, but I had a business coach. I'm a big believer in having business coaches. And I sat down with her and said, look, it looks hugely successful, but I'm working all these hours. I'm horrible to live with. My husband should have walked out on me. I'm not around for my children. And I'm not, to top it all off, I'm not even making any money. I'm really not making money. And if I could turn around to my husband and say, look, I'm making a fortune. Let's suck it up for 5 years. It will sort us out. But even that wasn't happening. So I said to her, all these things are happening. I just don't know what to do. And she said, okay, what is it that you love about your business? So, well, here's the ironic thing. It's all the bits that I was doing before. It's the marketing, it's the advertising, it's the PR, it's the growing the business. I love that side. And she said, well, why don't you do more of that? Well, I can't. I'm always baking. So she said, well, stop baking. And the penny dropped. And I realized that actually I could take the skills that I'd built before I built the cake business and actually use those and help people with marketing. So, yeah.
So there's two things you kind of mentioned there. One is support of your partner. I mean, I never mentioned Diane, on the podcast. I don't think she gets quite embarrassed about me doing a podcast anyway. But my wife's been amazing through my failure in the business and everything else. She's picked me up and kind of got me moving forward. Some of the things I had to do, like clean out my old offices, I just wouldn't have done it. She grabbed me down there and we literally were putting loads of stuff into bins and getting rid of everything.
Yeah.
So, I think that having a partner that supports you, I mean, you will, no one's perfect. You will have loads of rows and you'll blame each other for loads of things and you get all that kind of stuff. But having that partner that is supporting you throughout and sticking with you is so, so important. So kind of that's the other thing. But also, you had a conversation with a business coach and the business coach really stated the absolute obvious. And it was a pivotal moment for you. Really, really important thing for you to kind of understand. And, I'm now a business coach. I've been coaching for 2.5 years now. And it's surprising when you're in the trenches, when you're doing the stuff, when you cannot see the wood for the trees. And just by kind of not being emotionally involved, not being worried about where the next paycheck's coming from and all that kind of stuff, someone from the outside of the business can have such clarity on what you're doing wrong and, what you can change and can give that to you.
I mean, my family had kind of tried, they were trying to tell me that. And I've got the most wonderful family. So I've got nothing, I don't know what I was doing. I wasn't trying to prove anything from there. It wasn't like I had a difficult childhood and I was trying to show them I could do something. I had a great childhood, but I didn't want to hear it from them and I wouldn't hear it from them. Go figure.
No, I think it's normal. I think you get used to your day to day. Obviously, you respect your partner. I respect my wife, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to take business advice off her because I'm very entrenched in what I'm doing. I have a much different approach now to when I was kind of running the construction companies, and I've got much more open approach, and I'm really keen on learning. I'm always reading a book or listening to a podcast or, learning from other people. I love doing this because I think I learn from it. I'm not saying I've got all the answers. I'll work them out, but I'm not saying I have. And I've spoken to some really interesting people doing this podcast, and kind of the fact that a few people listen. And by the way, I'm very grateful for anyone who listens. But I do it because I enjoy doing it. So if you are listening to this, it's lovely to know. I have had a couple of messages from people who've said, really enjoying the podcast. It means so much to me. So, if you can get in contact or just put a little review up, I really appreciate that. So it's great to get feedback because I think, in today's kind of ways of contacting people and being out there on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, 95% of people, 99% of the people never comment, never like, never give you any feedback. And I still come across people go, I just follow you and I do this and it's made a huge difference in my business. Well, just tell me. Promise you I won't try and sell anything. I'm just interested that I'm having an effect on people because that's brilliant. That makes me feel, on a very selfish level, makes me feel really good about myself. So, that's great. So, right, okay. So when you kind of came to that realization, was it quite, because I know you didn't kind of go bust as such, but the company failed. What actually was your move then in kind of setting up a new company? Did you set up a new business? What did you do?
So my business is called Bite Me Marketing, my current business. And that's because my business coach, I mean, when you do, let's call it for what it was, I pretty much was busted. It was making no money. I didn't go become bankrupt or anything like that, but it wasn't a productive or it wasn't a working business. When I did close it down, you go through a mourning period. You really do. It feels like you've put your heart and your soul and blood and tears into something. You've given something your all. And to let it go, it does feel like a bereavement. And so my business coach said to me, because my cake business was called Bite Me Bakery. So she said, take the Bite Me with you, become Bite Me Marketing. It'll feel like the last couple of years haven't been a waste. You've learned something. It's a lesson. You can take that forward. There's transferable skills in there. So that's what I did. And I do actually think that really helped. What I then did, because, people book their wedding cakes a year in advance. So I had bookings, year, 18 months in advance. So I contacted everyone that had put down a deposit and I said to them, look, I am closing the business down. I wanted to let you know I'm taking the website down. I'm not taking any more bookings. You've got a choice. I will either honour your cake and I will give everything to you. I'm not going to give you a half-assed wedding cake. I will still honour what we've agreed. or I will give you your full deposit back and I will help you find another cake decorator. And I had a network of other cake decorators, so I knew I could refer to other people. And not a single person took the deposit and went somewhere else. And I really wanted them to, because when you're kind of like, okay, I've made a decision. It's a painful decision, but I'm going to do it. So what I did was, it took me just over a year to wind that business down. At the same time, because I wasn't spending time marketing the bakery and talking to editors, etc., I spent that time, I had been in digital media since 2000. So I had a good founding, I had a good basis in it. But things change in a heartbeat in this space. So I took that time to go back, retrained with some of the best people in the world, and to launch the business. And there was an overlap. So I soft launched the business, ran 2 of them together as I was learning and as I was starting to build up a client roster.
Talking about closing the business down, I've come across a lot of people that literally, they are so not present when their business goes into problems. And I'm an example, without naming any names, but we had an office, quite a large office space, which we rented out. Quite a large company came in. And I kind of knew there was something wrong, because the kind of chairs they were buying for their offices were £1,000 each and stuff like that, and there was 20 people in the office. It was quite a few people. Suddenly, they didn't pay the rent. So they didn't pay the rent that was due to us. The business owner just disappeared. He couldn't face the fact that he was going bust, and he just was absent. And I totally get that. I'm not particularly condemning him, because I would, if someone had offered me an income and a flight to Spain, I most probably would have taken it. But also, I kind of felt that I had to get up every day and I had to fight this thing, not to win and get the company back, because I knew other people would suffer because of the company going down. And I think that, you're closing one company, even if you're trading down, the fact that you just didn't say to people, right, okay, sod you, have your deposit back, I'm not doing it anymore. The fact that you actually decided that you didn't want to let these people down, they'd obviously put a lot of effort into choosing you to do their cake, they wanted to get the best out of you, and you wanted to carry on, despite the fact that you had no further business with them. I think that's great. I think that's really commendable.
I'd like to think most of us would be like that we run our business ethically. I'd like to think that. I think most people are. You'll always get ones that don't, but I'm a big believer in treating other people how you'd like to be treated, and karma and all the rest of it. So,
I totally agree. I have this belief in business: birds of a feather flock together. Okay, so in my industry, construction, there is an element where it's catch as catch can, sod everyone else, go bust, Phoenix, regrow your business, go bust, just to not pay people. And, the whole every day is doing battle. So that's an element of the industry. Don't know how big it is, but it exists. I don't play over there. They can stay on their side of the street. I play with the industry that believe in a win-win, that are ethical, help each other out, understand that,
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. It's so, so important. And you've got to understand that, yes, you're in business to make money, but there's so many more things important around that.
Yeah.
And if you get those right, you'll make money.
Yeah. Oh, I totally believe you can make money ethically.
Yeah.
You can do. I really like that about the birds of the feather flock together in business. I really like that.
I'm a huge believer in it, and we're both in some of the same circles. Kind of, once you join this space, you tend to join these circles, and basically the people that are doing things like we're doing, how supportive are they? It's amazing sometimes to go to some of these network meetings, people like Expert Empires and that kind of thing, where everyone's buzzing, everyone's talking about growth, everyone's quite willing to chat to you and give advice and tell you about their experiences. Whereas sometimes I think you go to some place and it's like, I'm not telling you. I might give the game away. Might give away a secret.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I love also in those kind of communities where everyone celebrates other people's successes. And even if you're having a tough month, you'll still celebrate with others. It's lovely. I love being in communities like that.
It can make a big difference. And I've been to meetings of the ECA, which is the Elite Closing Academy, a little shout out for them, which is a great, great community. And people have gone to the meeting, which is held in Birmingham every month, and they're really down. They're kind of really having a hard time with it because you don't get things right first time, and you have to learn how to measure and adapt and change. And you'll know all about this, Sam, because you're in that space, in the advertising space. So I've suddenly gone from being a builder to understanding funnels and Facebook ads, and God, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world. So,
welcome to my world.
yes, I know. I
The
built a
deep
funnel the other
rabbit
day.
hole, you won't come out.
Yeah, so it's a whole new thing, and you've
Well
got to
done.
really kind of get it right. And social media, you love it and hate it. There's bits of it I really hate, but it does put you in front of a lot of people. So whatever business you've got, social media will be an important part of that business.
Oh, yeah.
And, so people get down because they're not having success, and they can go and they can be lifted up by other people who are willing to do that and give them ideas. And after, a day there, however exhausting it is, they're ready to get going again. And I think that's really helpful. So networking and having those kind of groups and support is so important.
Yeah, I wouldn't do without it. I really wouldn't.
Well, that's good to hear. So, looking back on your cake business, could you have run it profitably? What would you change now that could have made you succeed?
That is a really, really good question, Robin. I honestly don't. Okay, no. I'm going to contradict myself there. So, yes, I am a bit of a gadget lover. So my outgoings, any kind of like gadget in whatever I do, I just love a gadget. And so I probably bought a lot of equipment that I didn't need just because it was lovely, shiny and new and I wanted to have a play with it. So yes, I could have bought less. Would I ever have made it a massive success? I don't think so. I'm not saying you can't. I think it's a very, very challenging marketplace. I think anything that is handmade that anyone essentially could do in their own kitchen. Yes, you need training. Yes, you need some of the skills, but really we can all make cake. People just don't really value those kind of like handmade things. I just don't think for the amount of time you can really value. I mean, I had cakes where I spent 120 hours making sugar flowers for it. You just can't. You have to be in the right market to be able to charge for that. So there are some very top level like Sylvia Weinstock and people like that who are the very top level ones working out of New York to celebrities. Yeah, they're making money. They have massive teams. She doesn't even touch the cake. She's the face of the cakes. But I think it's very difficult to make money at the lower levels. I really do. But do you know what? Hats off and good luck to anyone that can do it. You succeeded where I didn't.
Oh, yeah. It's very difficult to scale, isn't it? That's what you're saying, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, scaling anything. But I do feel what scares me about the world today is we're getting more and more reliant on these massive companies, Amazon and others, even supermarkets, who aren't providing us kind of what we want. And there's lots of little people who are doing stuff, and they're not as expensive as we think they are. They're reasonably costed for what they're giving you because the quality is much better. And we're not supporting them enough. Local butchers, food. There's so many around me, people who produce food. There's fantastic bakers not far from me who they produce all kinds of stuff and they run out very quickly. They're reasonably well supported, but people don't support these companies enough. And, if you've got someone kind of locally who makes cakes, who's making a living out of that, it's going to be, a bit more expensive than buying one from Sainsbury's.
Oh, the quality is going to be a whole different league though.
Yeah. It's so nice to support these people and do that. And I think we're losing sight of that. And we're actually giving in to these large corporates. And we're giving them so much power. Even social media. I mean, social media is scary. If you get, in our industry, you get chucked off Facebook. And actually, Facebook can't tell you why they chuck you off sometimes. They chuck you off and they kind of go, well, the computer said no. Well, what did it say no to? We don't know. Yeah. So,
But you've put me in jail and you haven't told me what you've arrested me for.
Yeah, exactly. LinkedIn is the same. You can get chucked off LinkedIn and you can't ever get back on LinkedIn. Whereas Facebook, there are ways back in. But we're allowing these big, massive corporations to have so much power. And it reminds me of a George Orwell book called 1984. So it's getting very much like that. These corporations know so much about us because of funnels. There's people going through my funnels at the moment that I know quite a bit about. They've been following me for a while. They're in my system. I know what the information they've got from me. I know what information they've given to me. They don't know. They just get an email every week. I'm not trying to put anyone off, by the way.
Go down his funnel, please.
Yeah, please go down my funnel. There's some really valuable information there if you're in construction. But that's a very small part of what, you are in someone's funnel out there and you're in some of these big corporates' funnels and they know a lot about you.
Yeah. And not just about you, your connections. Last night I turned my laptop on. I knew my husband had been looking at rucksacks because my son's gone off on scout camp. And on my laptop, there were ads, millets, rucksacks. And I was like, it wasn't even me searching. But we're connected. We're a family. So if my husband's looking for something, there's a good chance I'm looking for it.
Yeah, Yeah, I've had a few problems like that. So, yeah,
I don't want to ask.
No, nothing like that. Just things that perhaps we share a passion. I'm a gadget freak. You should see my office. It's big screens all over the place, cameras all over the place. I've got all kinds of lightings and strange stuff in here. So I love my gadgets. Every gadget I'm going to buy is going to change my life. Never does. Yeah, so I start searching for a gadget, or I get pulled into a funnel for a gadget. My wife goes, "What have you been looking at?"
Coming up on my screen. Come on.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
So, yeah. Gadget and darts are my thing, but yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I buy my cars just because of the gadgets on them. So, if they've got gadgets, that's not about going fast. I like to go fast, but it's not about going fast because let's face it, you can't really floor a car in the UK, can you? But hey, some nice gadgets.
We'll have to compare gadgets.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll have a gadget comparison. So going back to the business then, you couldn't have scaled the old business, but what did you learn from the old business that you put into the new business?
Honestly, I learned more in that 2 years of running that cake business, and it has set me up so well for business in future. I think one of the main things I learned was resilience, that actually you can rebuild yourself. I've actually got another story kind of, I suppose, coming into this business, and that was coming into COVID, into lockdown. I'm sure you've had a lot of people on your podcast talking about this, but how that impacted business. And literally within the space of 2 weeks, I lost all of my clients, because one of the first things you cut when there's so much uncertainty is your marketing budget. And so my business went from, I was in that scaling level to having pretty much zero income, zero cash flow. And I think if it wasn't for going through what I went through with the cake business, I think that would have been 100 times harder. It really would have been. So it taught me resilience, and it taught me that you can reinvent yourself, or maybe not even reinvent yourself. You can take those skills and you can transfer it somewhere else. There will be things that you're really good at, and maybe that business didn't work so well, but how can you take those skills and apply it to your next business?
Oh, and I saw some fantastic pivots during lockdown. Vegetable box people that were doing like 30 or 40 deliveries, suddenly doing 1,000 or 2,000 deliveries.
Yeah.
And they had to suddenly scale. And of course, it wasn't going to last forever. So it's very difficult for them to scale and kind of work out if they're going to keep these people, if they're not. So, there was some really interesting pivots, but people did, and they really thought about it. Even a local pub started doing takeaways. They did a burger van thing for walkers and coffee, just so you could walk somewhere. And so there was fantastic pivots during that. But you say about marketing, one thing my father always said to me was, in bad times, you up your marketing. Always reserve that, because you've got to get out there and market, and that's definitely works. Because actually there is a calculation that says lots of people drop their marketing. So actually marketing is cheaper and more effective in bad times than in good times.
Let me tell you, I was shouting at the time because I've got that previous experience of, okay, we hadn't been through a global pandemic, but I'd worked in media long enough to know how the price of advertising goes up and down. So I was saying through lockdown, advertise now, because the supply has gone through the roof, because we're all stuck at home and we're all on social media connecting with each other. And the demand has dropped through the floor because there's loads of companies have pulled their ad budgets. And it has proven to be true. The best time to have advertised on Facebook was during lockdown. Obviously, as long as, your business was relevant, you could still trade. Don't just advertise for the sake of advertising, but even just have a presence. I've got clients that were getting 26, 27 times return on investment. So for every pound they were spending on advertising, they were getting 26, 27 pounds back. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I started advertising in lockdown, might be. And we had a webinar craze going on, and it was easy to get people onto webinars and give them some real value, and teach them something can help them, which is nice. But that all changed. Really. I think a lot of people are webinared out. They're still very effective, but it's kind of different kind of approach now. And I think also, going back to your expertise of marketing, you have to change it so often, doesn't it? Something works this year won't work next year. So you have something, you go, wow, that's really good. That really works. I'm getting loads of people. And if you're a construction business, it might be exactly the same situation with you. And then next year, because it's all based around social media, they change something, or iOS changes, or it doesn't work.
Yeah. It can be less than a year's difference. It can literally be like what happened last week. That quick.
Absolutely. So I think you've always got to be measuring and pivoting. So KPIs are so important, aren't they?
Yes.
So very, very important business, and what you measure and knowing that things are being affected. So what I always do on these podcasts is when we come to a close is I ask kind of a question. It's always the same question, which is if you were talking to someone who's going into business or who's running a business, what 3 bits of advice would you give to them that you've learned from mistakes?
Oh, that is such a good question, Robin. I feel like I should have prepared for this. Okay, my number one is it's all about who you surround yourself with. So it's a bit like earlier. It's about finding a community that lifts you and challenges you. That actually, do you know, I'm not, when you say always be the most stupid person in the room, I like that. I like being challenged. I like being in a room where people around me are that step ahead because I can look and learn. But I also think it's good to be with your peers. So you can be in the room with people that got the same challenges as you, because there'll be things that you don't know. You just don't know you don't know it. And they'll go through a situation, you go, oh, I need to apply to that business. But then also be around people who are a step behind you so that you can help lift them up and you can help support them as well. So I do think it's about being in really good, supportive communities. That will just keep you going. The second thing I would say is don't underestimate the value of the network that you've already got. So just about reaching out to people that already know you and just asking for help and accepting help, just seeing if, and I know this is something they talk about a lot in ECA, just ask the people you know, do they know of anyone that needs help at the moment? We're all busy and we've got a lot going on in our heads. It's not that they don't want to support you. They probably haven't even thought that you need help. So I would use my connections. And I think the third thing is not necessarily something I learned through cakes. It's actually something that I'm really focusing on this year and has been a game changer for me in my business. And that is about looking after yourself and looking after your own mental and physical health. In the, as I said earlier, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad used to work 6 days a week. He used to be out for work in 7 a.m, wouldn't get home from work until 9 o'clock in the evening. So my default is a very high kind of work ethic. If things aren't going well, I'm likely to be working 14 hours a day. It's not a very healthy thing to do, my default. Whereas my focus this year has been on, I have an hour in my diary every single morning that I never book any meetings in whatsoever. And that is my hour for exercise. And I do it whether I feel like it or not. I will go, I've got a home gym and I go and spend 45 minutes, 50 minutes in the home gym. And it has got me through wobbles. It's got me through difficult days, just looking after myself physically. So that would be my third thing is don't put yourself at the bottom of the pile. You, with good mental and physical health, will have more chance of running a successful business than if you run yourself into the ground.
Such good points, and particularly about your welfare. Mental health is, I think, really poignant when it comes to this podcast. The amount of people that have gone through any type of failure, and it's kind of pivoted a little bit because we talk about personal failure, we talk about business failure, but their mental well-being has really been impacted. And there is some terrible stories of people that have taken their life because they just couldn't deal with what's happening. And these problems are solvable. If you surround yourself with people that have been there and done it, they will find a solution for you. And as you say, you said it in a different way, but you don't know what you don't know. I keep saying this to people because, my industry particularly, everyone thinks they know everything, but you don't know what you don't know. And I'm still learning. So, that's such an important part of doing business.
Yep.
So thank you, Sam, for joining us. I'd just like to ask any listeners out there, please press the follow button. Just remember to do that, and that means you get an automatic download. You'll be told when the next one comes out. They come out every 2 weeks. We've got some fantastic guests coming up, so some very interesting stuff. And thank you for listening, and thank you, Sam, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Bust and Beyond with Robin Hayhurst. Be sure to tune in next time and visit his website at robinhayhurst.com.